Welcome to Women in the Nude, where we expose everything except for our bodies. We'll leave that to your imagination. You guys, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. We have Karen Tang on. And if you have not seen her on Instagram or TikTok, wherever you get any of your entertainment, you are missing out. She is extremely funny, but she is also, she's got a plethora of knowledge. She is a gynecologist, she's an author, and overall just educator. And she brings me joy. So I'm just thrilled that she wanted to come on the podcast. Karen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting, and that's quite a lot to live up to. I'm like, the pressure's on. I got to educate and entertain it all. We're squeezing it all in, so it's great.
I love everything that you do. And I've talked about this on the podcast and in interviews before, where I just crave a doctor who will listen and who will also just, give practical information and education. And we need that so badly. And then here you are with, just in general, all of your joy and the humor that you bring, but you are just educating women everywhere, and you're giving that out from your heart. And I'm so thankful for you and people like you.
Thank you. That means so much to me. It really does.
Of course. I mean, for those who don't know, I would love for you to kind of tell your story, like maybe even start just, why you chose this career path. What made you even want to go into this side of the medical business?
Absolutely. So for those who don't know me, I'm Karen Tang. I'm a gynecologist. And, by day, my actual specialty is it's called minimally invasive gynecologic surgery, which is basically we do surgeries for problems like endometriosis and fibroids and cysts. And if you had told me a couple years ago that I would be on TikTok, we were talking a few minutes ago about, if you had told me a few years ago, I'd be like singing with a tampon as a microphone on TikTok, making videos, I would have thought you were crazy. And so the whole story was, I kind of thought I was just going to be a regular, boring doctor. I wanted to do women's health pretty much right off the bat. I knew that was a passion of mine. I would say kind of the punchline of all of the stories and things I'm going to share is don't count yourself out. Don't talk yourself out of things that you think may not be your strength or your wheelhouse, because oftentimes you'll surprise yourself. So even kind of when I was choosing a medical practice, I never thought I was going to do surgery right off the beginning. I thought that was something that like men did, and like, jocks did orthopedic surgeries, and it was scary. I never for a second thought I would be a surgeon. And then when I actually did my rotation, I was like, fuck, I'm good at this. I really have skills. I can do this. And one of my mentors, who was a male vascular surgeon, was like, yeah, you could be a surgeon. Of course you can. You're doing great. And that somehow just turned a switch that I was like, yeah, I can do this. So I did OB/GYN residency, did a specialization in laparoscopic surgery. And, that's kind of my day job. The social media thing was completely an accident. I before 2018 had zero. And when I tell you zero, I had zero social media. I had no Twitter, no Instagram, nothing. And then one day, a friend of mine in my field was like, this is how people get their health information now. Like, they rarely go to their doctor and ask every question about their health. They're going on Instagram. There was not really a TikTok at that time, but, we're going on Twitter, on Facebook, and trying to find answers because, like you said, a lot of times, especially with women's health, people don't get the answers from traditional sources like their doctor, from school. And there's really a gap, a really, a black hole, even you could call it, of information. And they were going on social media to get it. So very grudgingly, I was like, oh God, I got to start an Instagram. I don't know what this is. I literally asked people to show me, like they literally had to take my phone and install it and show me how to use it. So, for people out there who are nervous about kind of getting into social media or anything, any field where you don't know what you're doing, don't be scared because everybody starts from somewhere. And the TikTok thing, again, when I was doing Instagram, I tried not to really show my face very much. I'm like naturally kind of a shy person. And the TikTok thing happened because at the beginning of the pandemic, when everything shut down, like everything, non-life-saving surgeries were all stopped. So we had no elective surgeries. That's all I do. I don't do like life-saving surgeries per se. So literally everything shut down. And at the time, some friends of mine who are doctors on social media had already wandered over to TikTok. And a friend of mine, Jennifer Lincoln, who's a gynecologist, quickly amassed like 3 million followers, just talking about basic health, basic things. How do you use a tampon? Is this normal? Is this normal for my body to do? Even just saying things like, don't let a partner abuse you. Like, if you don't feel comfortable with something sexually, like say no, like just basic things. And there was such a lack of that information from a doctor that just she took off. And so, she and several other doctors were like, well, what do you have to lose? Just try it.
Right.
And again, I'm like, I don't want to say I'm old, but I could be like the mom of a lot of these TikTokers. I'm a little bit older, but I didn't dance. I don't do the typical TikTok stuff, but I get on camera and I just talk, or like I make fun of myself, and then I use it to be educational, or I see a trending video and I try and make something educational out of it. So I kind of, did what I could. I used my strengths, which, I think I educate well and I explain things in a clear way. And I tried to kind of apply that to that medium. So that's how that kind of happened. And then, just the book and all of this just sprang out of the need that I saw every day in my practice on social media for just like basic questions. People would come in and be like, I've had this problem for years and no doctor has really explained this to me. And I'm like, that's just fibroids. Like that's gynecology 101. You should have this information. And so because there were sort of these gaps in knowledge, I was like, well, let me try and fill them with whatever medium I can, writing, video, podcast now. So
Right. Well,
that's the long-winded answer.
No, I love it. Thank you so much. Just to kind of go back to the surgeon part of it. The first thing I thought of in my head was scary, and you ended up saying it like that. That to me is nerve wracking for obvious reasons, but I can totally see why. Yeah, you would need somebody to just kind of fuel you to have somebody else say you can do this. I'm sure was that point, because I mean, I would trust you, but
thank you.
to get to that point it must be difficult. That first initial surgery, that first the time that you're operating on somebody, I can't even imagine. So kudos to you for getting to the point where you've just tried in general and believed that you could, based on your knowledge and what you've learned and your want to help people. And somebody with PCOS, when it comes to endometriosis and a lot of the things that can stem from PCOS, a doctor like you who listens and is passionate about it and is actively doing things to help people in those situations. Without doctors like you, we wouldn't, be improving in our health. So it's, on top of everything that you do, is I'm thankful that there are people like you. So I went to 17 gynecologists.
Oh my gosh.
One endocrinologist told me
wow,
I could potentially have PCOS, and I had never even heard of PCOS before.
And it's the most common endocrine condition in women our age. Exactly.
I know that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It is a wild thing that we struggle to get, like you said, basic health information. And I feel like so much of it is, it's a double-sided thing, right? Like no one really wants to go to the doctor because not only do they feel like, well, at least for me, in my opinion, I wasn't getting anything from it. So I was like, well, this isn't just another doctor's appointment. I'm going to get insulted, or not. I'm not going to get listened to, or they're, going to make some sort of assumption about my life. And there's no point here. But on top of it, you just feel like you don't want to ask the questions that you need to ask either. Yeah. Like I didn't feel comfortable talking to my doctor because I felt like there was judgment, or there was, or just plain the fact that it was awkward,
Yeah, I was about to say, it's not a natural thing to kind of, bring up issues with your periods or your skin. It's like sexuality, forget it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You go on to like the actual, pleasure side.
Right. We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that later. But it truly is one of those things where I look to social media to find any sort of information that could be helpful in my situation. And it did. And it actually gave me a lot of courage
Mhm.
to speak to my doctors about it.
Yeah.
So, well, I did, and I feel like a lot of them hate TikTok and Instagram because it makes people ask questions, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or there's a ton of
There's
misinformation
a
out
lot
there.
of misinformation out there too. Yeah.
So I'm sure it fuels, the other side of the coin where there's a lot of, well, yeah,
It's
misinformation
hard to
or
sift through exactly and know what to believe.
what
Exactly.
is true, what isn't true.
Hmm.
And I'm just thankful now. I mean, the statistics behind women who don't know how their bodies work
Hmm.
in the US is just insanity.
Absolutely.
That they can't point, their own body parts out on a map. Like
Yeah.
it really is sad. And it comes down to our education. Yeah, we're not learning it in school.
Hmm.
We don't have doctors that are willing to talk to us about it or aren't taking the time to just, explain basic things from pediatrics up until when you're a woman and you're actually, needing certain information, getting your
Yeah.
first pap smear. So many things that, we don't know what to expect.
Hmm.
And I just,
You
again,
just listed like 20 things I want to talk about where I was like, let's
I know,
talk about.
I was trying to
Oh
mark
my
off the things
God.
that you were talking about. I was like, wait, okay. There's all these reasons.
Like an organic conversation. No, it's true. Kind of one of the first things you said was, like just the fact the number of doctors you had to see to get a basic diagnosis. I did not realize this until, again, the social media actually taught me a lot because I was hearing these stories of, oh my God, I've seen doctor after doctor after doctor, and myself being the doctor, I oftentimes don't know how many patients, how many doctors people have seen before they got to my door. On average, something like for endometriosis, people are seeing at least 3 doctors on average before they get a diagnosis. On average, 7 years from the time that they have symptoms until they get a diagnosis, because something about the way that people are hearing patients is getting lost in translation. Like when you put it on paper, it's like the PCOS symptoms could not be more straightforward. It could not be more bare bones when you like lay it out. But somehow when people are talking to their doctor, it's getting lost in translation. And for the podcast audience, I'm like waving my hands in the air. It's getting lost. But same thing for endometriosis. I tell patients, I'm like, you could not have more classic symptoms. Like you could not write a textbook case that is more exactly what endometriosis is as what you have, but somehow people are not hearing it. So, that's one issue. And I actually write in the book at the beginning a little note to other healthcare providers, because nobody sets out in medicine to be someone who doesn't listen to their patients.
Right.
We sacrifice our lives and all the money and all that stuff. But the way that we're taught, I think this is the problem, is the system. I give the example of endometriosis. Someone has pain with periods, pain with sex, bleeding all the time. They have problems with their bowel movements. They have diarrhea. They have nausea. They have bloating. You take that list of symptoms and you give it to someone, and their instinct is to say, this person is crazy. They have too many problems. That is not possible. Instead of knowing that that is classic endometriosis. Same thing with PCOS. I'm having weight gain. I'm having period problems. I am having mood issues. My skin is going crazy. That person's crazy. It's not PCOS. So again, something about the way that we're being trained is we're not kind of putting it together. It's the lens in which people are hearing women's problems. So that's, and then then the problem of the education system. I'll tell you a story. My husband teaches college courses, so he has a PhD in ethics, and he used to start his college sexual ethics courses with the basics of your body, because if you don't understand how things work, how can you discuss the ethics of it? And again, I wish politicians would have that same quiz, but like we're making laws based on our inability to understand women's bodies. So he would do kind of a quiz in the beginning just to see what people knew, and nobody knew. Like if you had people like label the parts of the female anatomy, almost no one got it right. And these are people who are legal adults. They can become parents, they can vote, but no one had taught them what their bodies were. Like their schools, their parents, their friends, their doctors, no one. And someone had got to that point in life. And, it's not that there was like one person, it was like the whole class every single time. So, this is where, it became really obvious that just like our systems are failing women. And I'll also say too, because I have a lot of transgender and non-binary patients and, intersex patients who have gynecologic issues too. So, women and those assigned female at birth, people with a uterus, it's across the board like that. We're somehow failing half the population. So,
yeah. I mean, I had a doctor flat out tell me I was lying.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Just, well, you must be lying. I'm like,
no. I promise you I'm not lying.
I promise you I'm not. There are easier ways to get birth control. I remember I was just trying to get birth control, and I'm like, no, I actually don't want to be on birth control. Yeah, it is, and I think that does make sense. I think that's an issue with a lot of our systems in general, not just in the medical field. It's a training thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about how you learn and how you've been trained, and it's hard to kind of break out of that because that's your choice. It's your choice as a doctor to try and listen to your patients better or differently, or gather information in a different manner. Right before this podcast, actually, I found a gynecologist here where I'm living now who I love.
Awesome.
And it simply was just taking the time, just 2 minutes, to understand my medical history. I've never had a new doctor, ask me just what seemed like basic questions, but that no doctor has ever asked me before. And I just think that's great too.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit of backstory that's not your simple, like, do you have heart disease in your family? Which is still a very important question, don't get me wrong. But it's we have a set generalized questions that I feel like apply maybe to half or much less than half of us, and most of the time it doesn't have anything to do with our actual issues. And my period's only regulated after my son. So my PCOS was getting better, but as far as my actual issues, my PCOS essentially only went dormant, quote unquote, there for people who aren't watching, after my son was born. And that was just essentially my own, I don't want to say luck, but kind of, I put a lot of hard work into balancing my hormones, but that was just kind of the extra kick I needed. And most women don't have that after babies. So that was just, I'm gonna call it luck, because right now I can't find a better word.
I know. But, sometimes things just sort of change, and again, this is part of the issue. Sometimes we just don't know. Like, we don't know enough. There's not enough funding. There's not enough research. Like, there are a lot of things in women's health where we're just like, why does it happen? We don't know.
Yeah. Well, I applaud your husband for also taking the time to do that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to. He didn't need to.
Oh, he made that whole part of the curriculum up. He's like, we can't just start jumping in and start talking about legal discussions if people honestly don't even know how the parts work. Like, how can you have a discussion about the ethics of it? So
right, but and also what a ripple effect. You're not going to necessarily keep up with your students for years, but they might now have babies and teach their kids in a different manner, or just in general have different, empathy for other situations, whether it's people they know or don't know, or that just those simple little things make such a huge difference. So bravo to him and for just even wanting to do something like that.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say with the training and how doctors kind of communicate, another thing that a lot of patients have told me that they're surprised that I ask are things like, what are your goals? Because there are sometimes so many assumptions about what people's goals are or what their feelings are. You mentioned birth control. Some people don't want to be on birth control. Some people are like all about it, but we can't assume. We have to ask. We have to say, like, what are your thoughts on this? This came up actually in the wake of Roe v. Wade. Sterilization, kind of, tubal ligations really kind of went up, and people's interest and need for them really went up because people were so, desperate in certain states. I had people traveling from all over, like the South, like came up to Philadelphia where I am to get a tubal, because a lot of doctors would refuse to do them for women who were child free. Because they're like, well, the assumption is that, at some point you're going to change your mind. Like, you don't know it now, but you're going to want to be a mom, So again, just the assumptions about what someone's goal is for their health and their body, their fertility, we can't do that. Like, everybody is an independent different human being. So, one of the things I always ask is, what is your own goal? Like, do you want to get back to certain exercises? Do you, want to, be pain free? Do you want to, have the most aggressive surgery possible? Do you want to avoid surgery? So, we have to ask these things to help people figure out what's best for them. So,
yeah, which I, again, thoroughly thank you for.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever had a doctor actually ask me that. No,
hopefully everyone out there listening who is a doctor or a doctor in training, please ask your patients what they want. So
right, yeah, I suppose I've had one doctor ask me if I want to have kids in the near future, but I think that was pretty much it. But and what an important question. And like you said, everyone has different goals, and everyone has a different reason, a different backstory, different, whether that's, the partner that they're with at the time, or their medical history, or their family history, or there's a plethora of reasons. I have a lot of girlfriends who have decided to not have kids. And I fully respect that decision. Why force somebody to be a parent? And again, that is a different conversation, but it really is. I love my son is absolutely incredible. Couldn't imagine.
He's adorable. He's so cute. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So cute.
I bias, so I'm just gonna but
it's objectively true. It's
exactly right. I think that he is the best thing on the planet. Do I think people should be forced to have a kid? Absolutely not. They're a lot of work. They are the best thing, but they are a lot of work, and they're the best thing for our situation. It's not the best thing for everybody else. I do know, you're a parent, yes?
Yes, yeah, I have 3 kids, yeah.
Amazing, yeah, just 3.
Only 3.
Is it, I'm going to pivot just slightly here.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Is it hard to do your job and be a mom?
Yeah, I've had this discussion with a lot of other women physician moms, and a lot of us do these other things too, like the social media and side gigs or writing and things like this. And we always say, no one can do everything all at the same time, everything everywhere all at once. We can't be that. There's no way to be the perfect mom, working full time, doing everything. I heard someone, and I wish I knew who to credit with this, but it's not a balance. It's like a pendulum that, you can only kind of swing in a direction at any particular time. You can't be everywhere in every direction. So, I think all of us who are working moms, have to kind of pick our poison, so to speak. I'm never going to be the mom who does the parent teacher association and all of the individualized gifts and all this stuff. I don't know if your son watches Bluey.
You're not a Boo Basket person.
No. Oh God. I don't know if your son watches Bluey, but my kids really like Bluey, and we joke that no parent is as good as the Bluey parents, where they're just super involved every second. So, we do the best we can at all the things we can. With work, I started my career thinking I was going to be a high-powered academic doctor, and I was going to start a division and, all these training programs. And I realized very quickly that wasn't my talent, academic leadership. So, I put my energy and my time into the things I realized I was really good at and really enjoyed, and brought me that kind of motivation. And so, I'm starting a private practice because I kind of tried different practice styles, and this gave me the most, freedom to balance the mom time and the other time and the social media time. So, so I'm very fortunate to be able to kind of juggle that. And my husband, bless him, I said in the acknowledgments of my book, he believes in me more than I believe in myself, where I'm start doing TikToks. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to start a practice. He's like, great, you can do it. I'm like, can I do it? But no, it also takes that village, and my parents help out a lot. They live in our town, and they help, with childcare and cooking. And, so I think it does take quite a team to make all of those different exciting sounding roles happen. So, it is very hard to balance everything, but I'm very lucky as I have the whole support team behind me as well.
Yeah. Well, takes a village is exactly right. I'm sorry, I'm hearing a little feedback, and I think that is my fault. Let's see. I'm just gonna see. This can't be changed. I'm not
Do you want me to
sure.
test something?
It goes away and it comes back and it goes away. Do you have my sound on for you, or is it coming through your headphones?
It's through my headphones, yeah.
Oh, weird. Okay. All good.
Yeah. Let me just make sure. Sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe it like.
No, I think. Yeah. Let's see.
Let me just mess with it a little bit too, because it should be through the headphones.
I think I can just hear myself, which is weird because it should be coming through your headphones. Is that happening for you, by the way? Do you hear yourself on my end? You shouldn't, but sometimes that happens. Are we good? I didn't hear myself there.
No, it's on the headphones.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay, is it better now, or is it?
I think so.
Okay, all right. So I was like, it's sitting on the headphones. And I'm telling you, like I said, sometimes I've had weird crap happen where, like, literally, like the camera stops working or the microphone switches or something. So I'm like, I wouldn't rule out that like something weird happened, but yeah. Okay. Is that better now, though?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Just stop me if anything.
Oh no. It's definitely not. It's definitely not you.
Okay.
I don't think. And then we're good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, it definitely takes a village. Oh my goodness. Just, I mean, we have one, and I'm lucky that my husband can stay at home most of the time doing all of his work. And so we travel together.
Mm-hmm.
It is such again, lucky thing, right? We work really hard at it. I feel like that's what happens with luck, right? You put in the work and that, all those, there's fruit from that. But, it's obviously hard. We have a lot of amazing people around us. But to do what you love, when I'm filming, work on 1,000 different other things, because I just want to do too much. But when I'm actually physically filming, I'm, filming 15 to 17 hours a day.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
I'm gone for quite a bit of time, and I can, FaceTime on my lunch break, or they can come visit me. But it's hard. It is hard. It sucks to be away for that long, especially when they're little and changing so much.
That's worse than doctor hours, I'll tell you, by definitely worse than my hours for now. So yeah.
Yeah, it's rough. But it's worth it. I'm so thankful that I get to do my passion. And then I have a situation where that works for me. But I feel like we just put so much pressure on ourselves. Yeah, to be that perfect mom, and then to be that perfect, be perfect at your job or whatever it is that you have to leave to go do. And it's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Not, we try, right?
Yeah.
We can try our hardest. We can try and figure it out, do our best, but it's a lot. It takes a lot of energy, that, I try and have, but I don't always, quite get there. And it's how do you, process that? What do you do for your own self-care?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of those basics that come with just being a basic, clean human.
Just making it through the day.
Yeah, in order to get other things done, it really is like it's a juggling act. And
there's some days at the end of the day we're like, well, we're all alive. We've all just done the basic functions of living and eating and sleeping and washing ourselves. I almost wish that there was like an anti-Instagram where it was just like the real life blooper reels, because people see sometimes the social media and it's perfect and the children are beautiful and like well dressed and they're traveling and in your day-to-day where it's just like a mess and the kid is like has just torn their clothes off and is running around half naked and eating a Pop-Tart. I think it would make everybody feel a little bit better about how they're putting together their lives. So
I'm totally forgetting her name. I'll credit her in the captions because I'm going to talk about her because she's hilarious. There is this other mom. She doesn't show her kids, but she talks about them, talks about mom life.
Mm-hmm.
And she is also hilarious. And it is like the realest real things that you could say about being a mom. And it's hilarious. But I feel like we need that. We do need that contrast between like what, all those perfect pictures and everybody getting their Christmas cards or holiday cards out in time, or they're getting and the things that just seem so far from reality.
Mm-hmm.
We do need that. We do need that check.
Yeah. I will say I've never successfully gotten holiday cards out. We look at them and we're like, how did they get these pictures taken like a month ago and things addressed? We're like, no, it's
things are like, oh yeah. So I love holiday cards, but the things that I do sacrifice to get them are, like there are a lot of things that don't get done because I've decided to focus.
The energy can only go in that one direction.
Yeah. And I was writing addresses yesterday, and I was like, why didn't I just get this stupid stamp? I should have just gotten the fucking stamp. Now I'm doing all this.
We're like, do it next year.
I'm messing up. I'm like ruining envelopes. I'm like, this is just.
You're like, it's for the joy of the holidays.
Yeah, like Christmas joy. Holiday joy. That's good. Let's remember the reason.
The reason for.
Yeah. What is the reason again? People are just gonna throw these away. I don't know. It's yeah. But we figure it out. We do our things. But let's get back. So your book, Not Hysteria. I love the title. I think it's awesome. I love the artwork on the front. Again, for people who can't see this, do please watch this on YouTube when we post it, because you
need the visual.
Yes, we are entertaining. I'm sure we have to be fun to watch. You're really fun to watch on TikTok.
Thank you.
Hopefully, I'm okay to look at. It'll be a good video.
Good.
But I love the artwork on the front, and I would love for you to give us like a little bit of like a taste of what it's all about, what made you want to write it. And all the different things that the artwork can be on the front.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. So to set the scene for those who are on audio and can't see it. So the book is called It's Not Hysteria, Everything You Need to Know About Your Reproductive Health, parentheses, but we're never told. So it's literally that. It is every single thing. Like when I sat down, I was like, what if someone were to have a guide to literally anything about their gynecologic health in one place? So, back in the 70s, they had Our Bodies Ourselves, but that book went out of print, I think, like in the early 2000s. So, to have like one resource where you could kind of flip to a section and be like, oh my gosh, like I had this question, let me look it up. And so it is literally a guide to everything in your gynecologic health. There's chapters on PCOS, endometriosis, menopause, sexual health, vulvovaginal health, bladder health, pelvic floor, and also things like the topics which, again, a lot of people have opinions on, and there's a lot of misinformation about, like abortion and gender affirming care, birth control. And I start and end the book with sections on, like, thinking about your own health, like just taking stock of what you're going through, what your health needs are, and at the end, how to assess things. So we talked about, what are your goals? A lot of times people are like, I actually don't really know what options there are. So how can I know what my goals are? So it literally lays out like all these questions about, what do you think about birth control? What do you think about your plans for fertility? Are you interested? Are you not right now or maybe later? What are your thoughts on surgery? Some of the treatments are surgical. What do you feel about that? And so I start the book off with a chapter on history because, when we talked about why is it so bad right now? Like, why is this a problem? Basically across the whole world. It's not even just a US issue. I have a lot of followers from other countries who are like, no, it's no better in Europe. It's no better in Asia. We're all sort of in the same boat. But I have this history chapter just setting up the story, like throughout, like ancient Greeks, like witch hunts and, Freud, all of these things where people had opinions on women's health that was wrong. And that slowly leaked into how we see people today. Just the word hysteria. I love this title. I have to give it credit to my literary agent who came up with it because it really captures everything. It's not hysteria. And the word hysteria, it came from the word uterus. Like hystra means uterus in Greek. And it literally meant that people thought that your uterus was either completely controlling you, like that you had no control of your body. You were just out of control, and your uterus and your reproductive needs were, what was taking over your body and your mind. And then, in the time of like Freud and stuff, where people thought it meant that you were just like, your mind was not there. It was all, just you're hysterical. And, to help people, to empower them, to give them education about their bodies so that they could take things back. And my hope too with the book was not just that, obviously I want to help individual people, but I kind of want to get people talking, like just like this, just to kind of say like, why is it this bad? Like, shouldn't we have it be different? I told my editor and my agent right from the beginning. I was like, I want to start a revolution. we literally just get everyone to rise up and say, this is crazy. Like, it is hysteria, not that a person is hysterical, but that the world is a little hysterical in treating people this way. We shouldn't treat people this way. We should have more funding. We should have more research. There's a lot of stuff in the history chapter about just how poorly researched women's health is. Something like, I think like 10% of NIH funding goes to like women's health issues. I made the analogy, not the analogy, the point that the NIH funding in the year 2022, I don't know if you saw this video, I talked about it in a video, for smallpox was twice as much as it was for endometriosis, and way more than it was for fibroids. Fibroids affect the 2022, like 1 year ago. They were spending so much money researching a disease that was eradicated from the United States in the 1940s. It has not existed in the United States for like, many of these decades. It has not existed. But something that affects like almost every woman, like, 70, 80% of women will have fibroids in their lifetime. 10% of women have endometriosis, 10% of women have PCOS. But we have like no funding, no research. When you think about other diseases, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but like diabetes, we kind of know the mechanism of how it works. And so you can have medicines that, all these like fancy new medicines that target the different, pathways. PCOS, what medicines are there? It's birth control. There's nothing else. There's, like weight loss medications, but there's no specific PCOS medication. There's no specific medicine for PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So many of the things that we treat gynecologic health with is birth control, because there just are no other medications. Like we kind of somewhere along the way said it was okay just to have one class of medications that treat like everything in gynecology. And they do really work well for certain things, but
they can be great.
They can be great. Obviously we need them for reproductive autonomy. But just the concept that, can you imagine something in men's health that there would just be like one type of medicine, and they would just be, we're just going to apply it to literally everything. Every man's problem. That's it. And then no one along the way would be like, maybe we should come up with different treatments. So that's the book. And then again, for the audio listeners, so the cover of the US version of the book, the UK version is going to have a different cover, but the US version has a very colorful flame. It's basically a candle, and it's like rainbow colors, very pretty. And, from far away, it looks like a vulva. It's a vulva flame, I call it. And we went through several iterations of the cover, and I actually really love this one because it has so many different meanings. You could think of fire as something painful. So much of gynecologic health is pain related, unfortunately. I said you can think of it as like illumination. Like it's a flame giving light. It's giving illumination to some of these dark areas that we just don't know about, and we should. And I think you can think of it as like sparking a wildfire. Like, let's start this revolution and get the wildfire going and burn down. What is it like the ecosystem that it needs a periodic wildfire to just take everything down, all the dead stuff, and so cleanse it so you can have a rebirth. I kind of say that it can mean all those things. my vulva flame cover. So I really give kudos to my publisher is in the US is Flatiron Macmillan, and their art department did a fabulous job. So thank you to them.
So exciting.
Yeah.
I am so excited to read this book. I'm
coming your way.
Ready for it. Thank you. I'm so excited. And again, applaud you for that. I love that it's going to be that guidebook, because I feel like that's so dire. And I can't believe that other book stopped printing in 2000.
Right? Yeah. It had done so well. Like it had millions of copies. Like people clearly needed it. I'm actually not sure why it went out of print.
I'm fascinated. I'm going to look that up. I want to know why.
Yeah.
But yeah, truly sad that we kind of have to beg for people to research what's going on with our bodies.
Mhm.
I'm about to speak to another woman that studies sexual health,
Oh,
like
great.
women's sexual pleasure is something that she specializes in, which is so fascinating to me. And it's just, I'm excited that there are women out there that are really putting so much effort and time into that.
Yeah.
So necessary. And your book, I mean, I'm going to promote the shit out of
Oh
it
my God,
because
thank you.
we
I love
really,
you
we
so much. Thank
truly,
you.
truly need it. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm thrilled. But like the one type of medication, like birth control, my endocrinologist actually didn't want to put me on birth control. That was her biggest. That was her target, was to figure out the issue and figure out how to get me better without putting me on birth control.
Mhm.
And I think it was kind of just the way that I would react to certain things. So I think my body would just essentially, it would make my hormones worse. She didn't want to stick me on a whole bunch of medications. And yes, sometimes it works,
Mhm.
and if it works for you, that's amazing. It's awesome. That just was not a route that I also didn't want to go on. So I got the copper IUD,
Mhm.
and it slipped twice.
No. Oh gosh. Oh,
So the
yeah.
first time it slipped, I was around 19, and it slipped straight down. And so I didn't get that excruciating pain that a lot of women get if their IUD
It can
is
be really
removed.
painful. Yeah, if it falls. Yeah.
So I got an appointment as fast as I possibly could. I was like, I could be pregnant. I don't know. It's like one
Yeah.
of those things where I had something in place that was supposed to work and now it didn't. And there's so many complications that can happen with that. But the reason I'm sharing this particular story is because the gynecologist that I went to had me pee in a cup. It was a whole thing while I was waiting for my results. She lectured me and quizzed me on my life
Oh,
experiences.
geez.
Like she asked me if I knew who my partner was, or partners. She insinuated that I was sleeping with more than one person. If I had a job that could support a family, if I like, she
What?
quizzed me so hard, and I got
What?
to the point where I was like, "Am I pregnant? Like, do we know my results?" And she's like, "Oh no, it's negative.
What?
I was just trying to, what was the phrase that she used? I was just trying to show you how serious the situation was."
You're like,
And
I
I was just,
know. How
I was like,
serious.
what are you talking about?
What?
I'm like, I had birth control.
That
I
was.
was being safe. What are you talking about? I was trying to prevent this situation. What do you mean? I was being responsible.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, so
I
I
don't know.
was so
My
mad.
jaw is just hanging open. Again, for
I
the
know.
audio listeners, you can't see me going, with
Like,
this
what?
horrified look
Yeah.
on my face.
I was so mad. I was
I,
furious. Obviously, I changed doctors.
yeah.
Couldn't find anyone better for a very long
Oh
time.
my goodness.
And after my son, so probably about 6 or 8 months after I gave birth with him, I got an IUD put back in because this other gynecologist was like, "There's no way it's going to slip." I know it's extremely rare.
Mhm.
It's whatever percentage she gave me was so low. I was
Mhm.
like, okay, it's not going to happen again. That's fine. I loved it. It was great while it was
Interesting.
comfortable and in the right spot.
Mhm.
Yeah. And sure enough,
Oh no,
like about
it's expelled
8
again.
months ago, yeah, I was
Oh
like feeling
no.
like a little discomfort, and I was like, oh, it could be that. I'm not sure. Finally went in, and it had embedded into my cervix.
Oh, okay.
So it
Yeah.
hadn't quite slipped per se, but it
Mhm.
was not. It wasn't functioning.
Wasn't in the right spot. Mhm.
It was not in the right spot. But yeah, so we got that figured out. But man, it was just like really two in a row. Like the only thing that
I've
I really love and works for me as far as birth control goes. But
Oh my gosh. I have a friend who's another gynecologist. We've known each other since college, med school, everything. And she, I think, has had like a Mirena IUD expel like 3 times. And she kept trying. She's like,
oh,
I love this. Like, I'm going to keep on
you're
trying.
like,
And we say like sometimes it's just your uterus,
your
for
body,
whatever reason, is just
yeah,
not
rejects it.
having it. Yeah. So,
I mean, it is a foreign body
yeah.
still. It's
Yep.
still something in your body that is not supposed to be there. But yeah, just frustrating. Frustrating when you're trying to you figure out the right thing that works for you, and
Yeah.
just time and time again it doesn't.
Yeah, that's one of those other things too about gynecologic stuff is that so much of it is trial and error. where you have to just kind of see how you do with it. Again, I always kind of make the analogies of different types of medicine. Like there's a strategy more with like hypertension medicine. There's a whole algorithm, or like gynecology. We sort of like, well, let's just sort of try and see what happens. And if you do well, that's great. And if you don't, we try something different. And so, it's that again, it's just sort of the stuff that we're dealt with. We just kind of roll with it, but.
Right.
I wish there was a more scientific way to, assess.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So what do you think is like from social media, from patients, what do you think is the biggest myth? Like that or like a question that people come in with that you're like, what?
Oh gosh.
You know what I mean? Do you get like yeah, just in general.
So I'll do a couple of versions of this answer. So I think in the list of questions you had mentioned something like, what's like kind of the most unusual or something like that. I've been really surprised. Like there are certain times in social media where there are certain questions which I didn't realize so many people had the same question. So for instance, one of the things that keeps coming up over and over again is rectal pain, like pain with your periods that you feel in your butt, like you feel like sharp shooting rectal pain. I had no idea this was such a common thing. Like I obviously I have patients with it.
Personal question, but have you ever had it?
No, that's why I was like, I've never had it. But every few months on TikTok, someone will make a video and it will get millions of views. It's like, what is this step? And they show themselves falling over and holding their butt. And like, it's funny, but then like thousands of people in the comments are like, I have that. What is that? And so again, I had no idea this was such a common complaint, but I've made a few videos on it. It's, could be two things. One is just a random rectal muscle spasm. And then the other is it could be endometriosis. It's a common symptom of endo is, it grows right next to your rectum. You can feel it as sharp shooting pains in your rectum or pain when you have bowel movements. So that's, I was, there's certain questions where you're like, oh my gosh, this is like the most asked question. But, kind of a more serious answer to that question is, well, I'm having this problem. My doctor isn't listening. What do I do? And so that's obviously a complicated answer because, the answer is different depending on where you live. Like the simple answer was, well, go get a second opinion. Don't like just accept it. Like you've already given several examples of kind of horrible experiences. Like you shouldn't have to just sort of accept that. You deserve to find the right fit with a doctor who's going to listen to you and give you the information that you need. So, for things like endometriosis, a lot of people end up, traveling. They end up traveling to find a specialist. For PCOS, people will travel to like an endocrinologist or, reproductive endocrinologist who has the expertise if their general doctor isn't kind of listening. But then, I get messages from people from other countries, like, in the UK, the NHS, they're much more limited and kind of, they can't just pick up and see 7 different doctors, like they have to go through the system. So, whatever resources you have available to you, if you are able to travel to find a specialist, try to. And this is across the board with so many different conditions. So, for infertility, like people will travel to infertility doctors or, to gender affirming care, like, certain centers where they specialize in gender care and care for transgender patients. So a lot of that people will find through social media, through networks, like they're like, like communities and groups, like Reddit groups. For instance, like the sterilization thing, I didn't know about this before 2 years ago. There's a child-free Reddit that has 1 million members, and they publish a list of surgeons, both urologists and gynecologists, that will do a sterilization, won't grill you on, but you don't have kids, you're going to change your mind. So a lot of times people are sort of forming these communities online to give each other resources to help find the care that they need. So, if you can try and find someone who, has more expertise perhaps in the thing that you're having issues with, will listen to you. And it is tough because, if people live in a really remote place and they have few options, it's more difficult, but, just try and do what you can. In the meantime, we're going to try and change the system so that it's not that way, but yeah. And then the final answer to the, the what is the most common question is, is this normal? Like, so this is kind of like a variation of it's not hysteria question. Is this normal? Like, is this okay? Is this a problem? So I always answer that the general answer is if it's affecting your quality of life, it's not okay. There's a lot of things that are common, but it's not acceptable that you have to put up with it. So, period pain, PMS, like heavy periods, PMDD, pain with sex, like low libido. These are all things that are common, but they aren't things that are okay. So I always tell people that, it may be something that a lot of people have, meaning that it's not like a super rare, like super abnormal condition, but, is it acceptable to you? The answer is up to you. So if you are like, look, it's just keeping me from living my life. I can't go to work. I can't exercise. I can't have a sexual relationship with my partner. Then you should seek out answers, because a lot of the times, these are things that have solutions. We talked about the PCOS, like it's like one of the most common things in the world. There are some things that we can help with. We may not have all the answers, but we can make things better. With endometriosis, there are treatments, surgical treatments. A lot of people have, pelvic floor spasm. I'll put a little kind of shout out here to pelvic floor stuff, because a lot of people don't know they have it, and a lot of people have it. So, pain with sex, pain with exercise, shooting pains, problems with your bladder, constipation. Those are all symptoms of pelvic floor dysfunction. Can be treated with physical therapy. A lot of people don't know that. So a lot of times people, yeah. Or sometimes the opposite. Sometimes Kegels makes it worse. So
Really?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I send a lot of my patients for PT. Sometimes they're Kegling at home and making it worse, because the muscles, if they're seized up, can't work as well. So I know so sometimes people are like, I'm trying my best, but it's why isn't it getting better? So
I had pelvic dysfunction while I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And I was doing I was during COVID. I was doing a ton of those.
Yeah.
I wonder if I was making it worse.
So again, if it's not getting better, try and get help, because, oftentimes there's something that we can offer for a lot of these common conditions. So long-winded answer, but
No, I'm so glad that you did. And oh shoot, there was something that I was going to say and I totally forgot. I should have written it down. Damn it. What was it? That was totally my bad. It was good.
Oh, it's fine.
Oh, well, hopefully it'll come back. But yeah, I mean, I feel like you've got to hear like some crazy stuff. So thank you for sharing.
There's some pretty funny ones too. I have to say, like, I don't know how far back in the videos you went, but I will say the bro podcasts.
Love that one.
Oh my gosh. The number of crazy things that come out of those podcasts, where they're like, you can tell like the number of partners a woman has had by how loose her vagina. I'm like, no, how would you know?
Do you know how big?
What does that even mean? I always tell people it's not taking attendance. It can't tell if it's one person 100 times and 100 people one time. I mean, so many things that the wonders of social media will.
I mean, just wild. Having a son, and like my biggest thing with him as far as his partners go, like if he decides to be with women, like my biggest thing is like, you need to understand, you need to have empathy, you need to respect. Obviously consent is a huge thing. There's a long list you need to teach boys, but just I think it's so helpful to know how things work properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And why women sometimes act the way that they do. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on in their body, and if it was happening to you, you would be acting different too.
Yep.
It's just so my husband is one of 9 kids. He's number 5. He's right in the middle. He's got 3 sisters. And so when we started dating, I was shocked at how like sympathetic and helpful and like sweet he was around my period. Yeah. And it really is because he had sisters.
He had experience. Yeah. He saw.
He had experience where he understood like, okay, there's certain things that I know that they do that I can help with, or that, it was just so nice to have somebody that like cared about those times and understood that, there's certain things that are happening that are completely out of my control.
Yeah. I'll tell you, some of my biggest quote unquote fans on social media are men. like, gay men, straight men. And they're like, this is amazing. Like, because they didn't know a lot of these things. And then, I always tell people, every single person has someone in their life that's important to them that goes through this. Like you have somebody with a uterus that like, is going through periods or going through menopause or going through something. So, it's helpful to kind of know, to have that empathy, even if you're not personally going through it. To be able to sympathize or understand, to have some basic understanding from, the outside, and then to help out if you need to. So.
It is great when you have a partner like that, and being able to express what you need. I guess going into that side of things, like, why do you think like women's pleasure is so taboo? Like, why do we make millions, if not billions, of jokes about men and sex and how they feel and what feels good to them, and it's like in everything. Like, and I find those jokes funny as well. I'm not like immune to it. But we are so comfortable talking about what makes men happy, or the funny things that come along with that, and then the not so funny. Why do we have such an issue talking about women's pleasure? And obviously you're not going to have all the answers to this. I'm not like,
no. The answer, everything in our culture that,
right. But it drives me bananas. Why it feels, like we're doing something wrong when we talk about it.
I think that just, again, in our culture, that it seems like women shouldn't enjoy sex. Like somehow for men, it's a pleasure thing, or just like that's what men do. And for women, it's something that kind of just for so long, I think it was thought that women just tolerated it. And then it was just like they just had to kind of accept it so that they could carry on their function of like, birthing the heirs or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Deliver.
Yeah. But I think it is just, so much of sex in general, I think is taboo, like, but especially when it comes to women's sexual pleasure. I think that, we are sort of overcoming all those hundreds of years of like just assumptions. I think that, people, again, like, I think physically you can see if a man is aroused. They're like, okay, I see that. I see if he's had an orgasm. For women, it just seems so mysterious. Like, is she aroused? Is she having an orgasm? Like, we don't know, from the outside, obviously. So like we know, but so I think that it has seemed like this sort of mysterious and strange process. And of course, in just society now, there's so much where it's being censored, like the basic talk about women's bodies and sex. And there's such an association with, like, I don't know how much kind of bad words we can say on your podcast, but, that's it. I love it. Perfect. So I'll say, like, so many of like the banned books and the stuff that gets censored on social media is about like, oh my gosh, like they're like these like whorish women like, like how dare they like talk about their sexual experiences. And so I'll say that all of the platforms, we have to, as gynecologists, as medical doctors, like misspell the words like vagina, because otherwise they immediately censor it. Instantaneously gets taken down, or the audio gets taken down. So we have to be like vagina exclamation point in the middle as the I, so when we have that sort of context, like if you say the word vagina, it's dirty, it's like, it's inappropriate, then, like that sort of like carries on too into how people think about their own bodies. They're like, oh my God, like, is masturbating, like, am I doing something dirty? Am I doing something shameful? So people internalize that. It's healthy. Masturbation is an absolutely normal, healthy part of sexuality for all genders. It's a normal expression of your sexuality. And so, but sometimes, again, like, am I supposed to be enjoying this? I'm from New England. I'm from this like puritanical Massachusetts where, again, people don't talk about that. They're like, oh, like we don't talk about, like orgasms or libido or that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, as far as I go, my parents are very open with me, very great at communicating. I feel like I learned at an age that made sense for me at my time, at my maturity. But I don't think we ever, and my mom definitely listens to my podcast. So I'm going to shout out.
Good job, Mom.
blaming you. Yeah, good job, Mom. Not blaming you, but I don't think, or at least I don't remember us ever having a conversation about masturbation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is because it's taboo, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, also, what an awkward conversation to have
With
with
your
your kids. So
parents,
I
yeah.
totally understand. But it is interesting, all of these things that we should be talking to our kids about at their, right ages, different stages for different things. But there is this movement about teaching kids at a young age, when they're learning about their bodies, what their proper names are,
Mm-hmm.
so that if God forbid something ever happens, they can accurately tell you where somebody touched them. And it's so important for them to know their own bodies, and that should consistently apply as they get older. And do you like, I mean, they're intimate questions, but like when it comes to masturbation, do you think that there is a way that parents can explain it where it is more of a health issue rather than like you feeling dirty talking to your kid about
Yeah,
it? You know what I
and
mean?
so it's funny because my kids will tell you they're 7, 11, and 14, and I've already had some talks with the 11 and the 14-year-old, and they
Yeah.
joke it's like too much. They're like, "Mom, it's too much." Or they'll watch my videos and be like, "Mom, what is that?" And I'll be like, "I'll explain."
Yeah.
And so I try so hard to normalize all of it because, again, like, I think too, like all of us, I don't think very few people were raised in a family so free as to be like, yeah, like masturbation, orgasms, so there's a little bit of that hesitation, I think, for people to have those talks, with family especially, but even with friends or partners too. I was going to make the point when you were talking about like education, so much of sex ed is related to preventing something bad, like prevent STDs, prevent pregnancy. So it's rarely framed as like, what is the point of, the clitoris? Like, what is the point? So I think so much of it, like I said, the way that it's framed is something bad could happen as a result of you having sex. How do we keep that from happening? Instead of, how do you have a pleasurable and satisfying sexual experience for yourself
while being safe?
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of like, parents and families, just normalizing it. Again, like gynecologists, we have no problem saying this. Like, masturbation is a normal part of a sexual life. Everybody, in theory, if you want to be sexually active, can and should masturbate. It's a way to kind of explore your own body and, what gives you pleasure. So I think just normalizing it, like saying that this is okay, and, making people feel safe and not judged. And that, again, if right from the beginning, one of the first things that kids will do is they'll like kind of, like notice that it feels nice to, that the genitals have certain sensations, and some of them are nice sensations. So, like for different kids at different ages, obviously you have to be age appropriate, but, to say like, yeah, that's normal. Like if you have questions, come to me. Yeah. Yeah. But just keeping that door of communication open to like, so that you don't feel that it's too scary to talk to your parents about what's going on with your body, what you're feeling, what's going on with your relationships. And I'll say, like, I love my parents, but, Asian immigrant parents are not the ones having conversations about this. I really hope that changes. But, now myself as a gynecologist who, talks very freely about this stuff, I try and make my kids aware that they should always feel comfortable coming to me. I'm never going to judge what they say or, what they're feeling or what they're thinking, and, help them talk through it. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do feel like there's this, and again, anything that I say, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But I do feel like there's this overall feeling of masturbation leads to sex. Like, oh my God, if you masturbate, you're going to be sexually active. And I think that is something that parents are maybe, and teachers and whatever, are scared of, is the connection between pleasure and, the result of what they think that bad thing, like we were talking about, what that could be. And I feel like that's unfair and not true.
Yeah.
I feel like it's really it's an important thing to be able to express what makes you feel great with your partner later.
Yeah.
That type of communication is vital to a good relationship. Communication in all aspects of your relationship are so important, and that is not an exception. And if you as a woman don't know what is preferable, you can't explain that to a partner. And I feel like so many women just kind of are stagnant in that section of their relationships because they don't even know how to talk to their
Yeah.
partners about it.
I think part of that is that internalized kind of shame of,
Right.
like, well, I just feel uncomfortable talking about this. So I can't kind of explore it, either by yourself or with a partner. And then much less be able to say out loud the words like, well, this makes me feel good, or that doesn't. I don't feel comfortable with that, but that feels good. So, it all kind of comes back to that original, like, how do you see yourself and your body and your relationship to your body? And do you feel comfortable enough expressing that? So, I think early on, just having the ability to kind of say the words, like you said, like say the parts of your body, and it's okay. It's just a word. It's just, that's what it is. And to feel comfortable speaking up for yourself, I think is so important. So yeah, I think again, back to the, why has this been such a problem? I think just because so many women were just like, well, I can't like say that I like this. Otherwise people are going to judge me. They're going to say like, oh, she's, like promiscuous, or yeah, she's a whore. I know exactly. She's like, oh my God, like she wants sex. Like, what does that mean about her? And I hate to say it, but so many places in the country, that is how people think. They're like, like, oh my God, if you are sexually active and you have more than one partner, or if you want more sex, then, there's something wrong with you. So, I think that we do have to kind of have these conversations about, it's normal. It's normal to want to kind of find what feels best for you, and to be able to, if you're having partnered sex, to be able to share that with your partner so it can be a satisfying and respectful relationship. So,
right. And also sex is great. So
yeah.
all of those things together, right? Intimacy is important in all aspects, and it can be great. You need to talk about it.
Yeah. And it is important to prevent STDs and pregnancy, but that's not the only purpose. And so that's the only thing that people learn is like, bad thing, don't let it happen. It's, but no other information.
But no other information. It's definitely about balance. We should be learning all of it, and at proper ages, not just when we're an adult trying to figure it out. Yeah, I mean that's a really big thing. And just to kind of go back for a second, as far as when women talk about sex, I just feel like there's, so yes, this is a woman's podcast. Everyone essentially is invited, just like with your information, you're giving information about women, but you have a lot of male followers. I think this applies where it's like, I don't like to I don't like to man bash.
Yeah, exactly.
My husband is included in one of the most amazing people that I know. There are wonderful men out there. I think as far as society goes, though, when it comes to females and sex and enjoying it, there's this interesting separation of the fantasy of women enjoying sex when it comes to, porn or women they find attractive, and they like put them in this little box. And then if they meet a real life woman who actually, experiences everything in her life, including enjoying sex or enjoying or not enjoying certain things, she can easily be labeled as a whore based on liking the things that they wanted the girl in the fantasy to like. But if she does it in real life,
like, what?
It's a different story.
Yeah.
And there's this weird double standard, and it's really fascinating. And really, I see it on social media, whether it's a photo I post or I see comments on somebody else's page, another woman's page, where it's, it's judging you for doing whatever it is, and it's this really intense comment, and it's all based around the fact that you are a whore because you're doing X, Y, and Z. But it's also what they want to look at. And it's so very interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like I think it probably comes down to also maybe a shame thing.
Yeah.
Where they like looking at it, but they know that they shouldn't. So they're gonna blame you for it because you're the problem.
I was gonna say something like that. Yeah. That again, there's sort of like this internalized, like, well, but this is really exciting to me, but it's like taboo. So that's why it's exciting. And therefore in real life, if someone actually exhibits that kind of behavior, like, what? It's shameful. So I think there's a whole lot of that as well. That part of the excitement is the, like, that's illicit. Like, that's, like, not acceptable that a woman would be so like, like aroused, or like, just something about that, the Madonna whore dichotomy that, you And I hate to say this, but there's so much too, like, it's actually like kind of like from women. There's like this internalized misogyny from women as well, that like, if you're like a good wife, there's that like kind of whole like dresses like a 1950s housewife thing where people are like, that's like what a good mom is now, is you like put on like the 1950s outfit and like you stay home and you do this kind of stuff. And so not to judge anybody's like kind of preference if that's what you want to do, but then to say that that's what all women should be like, or and if you're not like that sort of like perfect homemaker lady who's very buttoned up, that you're like the extreme of you're the whore. And so
it exists everywhere. I'm in Nashville right now, and it's interesting because you don't get that, I feel like, as much in California. You do for sure, maybe not as much. I was living in Colorado. You don't really get that in Colorado. You do a little bit, but for whatever reason, okay, this is the South. I see a lot of that where it's, if they can dress a little sexier, maybe if they're going out with their husbands, but if they're going out on a girls' night, they have like buttons up to here. And it is so interesting to me where I'm also like, girls, it's okay to be sexy. It's okay to like dress in fashion that makes you feel happy. That doesn't mean that you're going to go home with somebody tonight.
Right.
It's
I think they're afraid to be judged. I think that if they're like, oh my God, if I like show my breasts, like, like it's scandalous, right? So I do kind of feel for people. If they feel like that, then there must be something about it. Like, I don't know how many people are like, I just love the look of a buttoned up to like my chin look. I think it's like a personal fashional choice, but it must be because people are like, oh, I don't want to give the wrong idea.
And you gotta, and I think it's definitely like I'm trying to describe it in a way that isn't offensive, because it, like we're saying, if that is what you want, that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Other people is not okay.
Exactly.
And I have nothing against people that want to have babies and stay at home. I think that's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with
Absolutely.
that. The pushing it on other women, like doubling down, like you're saying, almost on that misogyny, like it's your place. Like if you're doing something wrong, if you're not doing that, I think that
exactly
that's
the issue.
And I do feel like there's a little bit of that movement where it's like two extremes coming together, where that was dissipating and now it's coming back. And the resurgence is interesting. And it sucks because I want to make progress in that area.
I was about to say, it's hard enough to make progress.
Right, exactly.
Now we sort of feel like we slid back a few decades with a lot of things, but
right. Yeah. And that's it's frustrating. And I don't think any extreme on either side is good. It's just it's
exactly. I always tell people it's your individual preference. The same thing with like reproductive rights. I won't get too political, but just it's the same concept. It's like everyone can make the choice for themselves and for their body. But when you're like foisting your choice on everyone else, that's where the issue is that you can't sort of understand that someone may come to a different decision that you, or have a different kind of what's right for them and their family. That's where the issue is. Everyone can kind of dress and do exactly what they feel is best for them. But
yeah, I think we agree.
Yep.
But I also want to shift into talking about you, because you do so many amazing things for everyone else, and I can tell that you're passionate about your family, which I love. Where do you fall into this? Like, is this so much of your passion that it's starting your own practice and becoming an author and doing all these incredible things, all these milestones in your career? What are you like, Karen? What do you like to do aside from this?
So I kind of joke that like the social media became my whole, like, it was like my hobby and like my personality. So, I took a couple of months off. We were saying I have time to record this podcast because I'm starting my new practice. So I took a little time off after leaving my old practice and starting the new one. So I was like, I can exercise. Like,
Yeah.
I'm in the room with my Peloton right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can actually like exercise and read a book for fun and plan a trip. Like, so it is a little hard, back to the whole balance thing, to kind of remember who you are as an individual human being. So many of us wear the hats of like the mom and like the work person and the, whatever, if you're kind of trying to keep things balanced in your family and your home. But yeah, it is important. However, you can kind of carve out that space. So, we're planning a trip to Barcelona in the south of France, and yay! My husband's one of those Roman Empire guys, by the way, where he literally like he has like, oh my god, he literally like he has like a stack of books on ancient Rome. But I think it's interesting too. So we're gonna go to some places that have like ancient Roman ruins. I love that. I actually, little fun fact about me, I actually thought I was going to be an archaeologist at one point, like early in college. Yeah, I thought history and, like exploring these ancient sites was so interesting. So now I kind of do it for fun. But thank you for asking. I don't know if I've ever had an interview where they actually like, tell me about you. Is that sad? Is that sad? It's super sad. So sad. Be like, let's talk about endometriosis, or like, but which is, I just am a fountain of endometriosis facts, but not a human being.
It's so important. Yeah.
So it takes me a second to answer that question. I'm like, what about me? I don't know. This, yeah.
I'm glad. And I want this for you, Karen. I want you to find time for yourself.
Thank you.
And to really, to have that self-care for you, because also, it's like that whole, you can't help anybody else if you don't help yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you need help, but
I think we all need help. We all need to kind of put on the oxygen mask or whatever the expression is.
Every now and then.
Yeah.
And I don't know you, but I inherently am proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
I really am. And so, okay. So I ask everybody this question, because it can be a self-care thing. Mm-hmm. It can be whatever you want it to be. But the question is, what makes you feel sexy?
Oh my God. That's a great question. Like,
take as long as
that's a great, I'm going to, like 2 minutes later, I'll be like, what is this? But, and I always try and not make it about someone else, but I think in this case, it actually is, so my husband is amazing. Like I said, he's the best guy. Like and no matter what I am personally feeling about myself and my body, he'll be like, you're so hot. Like, what are you talking? So, I'll be like, oh my God, I feel like I'm bloated, I'm fat. Like, oh, like, I need to do more core exercises. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's awesome. Like, I love your he like kind of like, ooh, like, so, just kind of like realizing that the things that we tell ourselves about our bodies is not necessarily what a partner sees in us. And so I hate to say that it's external to my own like kind of, perception of myself, but so many of us are, like we don't feel like 1000% confident and sexy at all times. Like, I think it does take a little bit of an outsider to be like, you're crazy. Like, stop talking yourself out of your own sexiness. Like you're like, oh my God, I am hot. So I do appreciate, we were saying this is not about like bashing men, because some of them are amazing. Like, they really are like, you're great. Like, stop making fun of your like abdomen or whatever. Like, just embrace it. Like, feel sexy and feel attractive, and it almost kind of gives you that ability to see that in yourself. So sometimes we be like, just snap out of it.
Right. No, I love that. And it's just about like, in general, your husband feeling that way about like even pointing things out. Like, my husband loves my stretch marks. Babies, there's so much that happens to your body that, you're told might happen, and, some do, some don't, or maybe you're not told and they're surprises. I feel like that happens a lot more than not. But just in general, seeing him embrace my new body and, what that means, after baby is just, it's special. And I feel like it the whole experience brought us closer.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so
Because I'm
powerful
not.
when you think about that. Like, my husband's done this too. You're like, he's like, you created 3 human beings in there. Like, you like made from scratch a human and grew it and then pushed it out. And so your body is amazing.
A whole other organ and a whole other person.
Right.
And I mean, our bodies are
It's outrageous.
incredible.
Yeah.
And sometimes we do need somebody to remind us
Mhm.
that. But that is like, I have a lot of answers to what makes me feel sexy, just because, I'm asking other people this question. But my husband is definitely one of them, where it's like, if he finds me sexy, that makes me feel sexy, which I think is awesome and natural. And,
Absolutely.
and that's a good thing. A shower also makes me feel
That's great.
sexy.
I love my
like some self-care where I'm like, oh, I'm clean.
Smells good. The skin is like clean and soft. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. But thank you for answering that. I think it is one of those questions where I love it because everybody has a different answer to it. And I think it is one of those things that, like, you should also remind yourself, like, I'm either going to do this thing that makes me feel that way, or like, I am sexy, like feeling powerful in your skin. It's so easy to not. And we all have insecurities, and we all just sometimes need that reminder that, like, we're hot.
That's amazing. I love, again, it's funny because I just spent all this time talking about like rephrasing it and like, what do you need? And then honestly, so many of us don't think about that. Like, what makes you feel sexy or makes me feel like attractive? I'm like, oh my God, like we don't actually stop to like, think about ourselves and like what makes us feel good about ourselves. Like,
right.
It's kind of sad that it takes a second to kind of think of the answer. Like, you're like, what is the answer to that question?
Nobody's had, I don't think anybody that I've interviewed has had like a quick question, or a quick answer to that question. It's always like, well,
give me 2 minutes to think of something to say. Yeah. Oh, then it's a great question. It's like,
thanks. Yeah, this was so great.
I had such a good time. This is really fun. We're saying like we didn't know each other before this, but like I feel like you're, like a friend that we can kind of chat with. It's awesome. So
I appreciate that. Good. Yeah, I really am so glad that this worked out. And I guess my other question is, when does the book come out? Do you have a release
The book
date?
comes out May 7th in the US. I think it's May 30th in the UK and the Commonwealth. And on my website, KarenTangMD.com, it has links to everything. So links to pre-order, links to my social media, the YouTube, the TikTok, everything. So you can find me on there. And like I said, so Karen T. Can't speak. KarenTangMD.com. So all one word. Karen the boring way. I hate to say that. Karen, and then Tang like the juice. Tang. For whoever knows what Tang is anymore, I'm giving away how old I am, but Tang, the drink, the powdered orange drink. So KarenTangMD.com. So, and that's the same for all my social medias. This is KarenTangMD. So.
And I'll link everything in the caption.
Fabulous. Thank you.
For this episode, but this was
I had such a great time. This was a blast.
And it made my day too.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
And, we'll talk to you soon.